Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to episode 199 of the Sticks in the Six podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Forbes, as always, here with my co host, Peter Barricchini. And Peter, we're looking like we're going to get a rematch in the Stanley Cup final. We got some news to talk about out of that. We got some Leafs presser that happened in the last week with Keith Pelley, CEO of MLSE. But before we get into all that fun stuff, we're gonna keep it short this episode. There's not a ton to talk about. Before we get into all of that, though, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, it's going great, man. I mean, as you mentioned, we're on the verge of a possible rematch from last year, and I don't know about you, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm absolutely at the point now where if Edmonton is our chance to bring back a cup, especially for a second time right now, bring it back home to Canada. I want to see that cup back in Canada. Tired of it staying down south for too long, kind of thing. But you know what? Now's the time. And you know what? I'm just going to say this. I know when we did our predictions, we've written off the Oilers big time from round one on. And then they manhandle or came back and beat the LA Kings down 2-0 after they just looked absolutely lifeless. Then we thought that, okay, you know what? They're going up against a powerhouse in Vegas. They're going to be out in probably 5 or 6. They win it themselves and they take them down single-handedly, and now they're just basically pouncing all over the Dallas Stars right now, who were supposed to be a perennial Stanley Cup favorite and juggernaut, especially after the way that Mikko Rantanen has played in the first 2 rounds. And now all of a sudden it's a bit of a different story right now where he's gone quiet. The Oilers are now hot. Stuart Skinner's looking like a actual Vezina Trophy winner right now. And yeah, it just seems like everything's going Edmonton's way right now. So maybe us putting the Oilers on the back burner or counting them out for a bit probably ignited a bit of a fire in them.
This happened 2 seasons ago when we wrote off the Tampa Bay Lightning the entire
Yeah.
playoffs, and they went on to win the cup. So I think it's got to be a sticks in the six type of boost or curse or whatever you want to call it. But regardless, yeah.
We're eating our words, basically.
Yeah, I'm not. I like the idea of the cup coming back to Canada. At the same time, I want to see new teams
Mm-hmm.
every year, unless it's of course the Leafs. I want to see new teams every year. Like this, I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole here, but we're talking tax free states. I think we talked about last
Oh,
episode.
yeah.
Dallas and Florida, 2 of the final 4 tax free states. A conversation the NHL continues or should have at the head office level. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess the point is you can't write off a team that has Leon Draisaitl, that has Connor McDavid, that has
Mm-hmm.
and granted we wrote them off because Stuart Skinner was having the shittiest start to the playoffs he's ever had. And then Calvin Pickard came in as the go-to guy, and I didn't have faith in that goaltending duo. That
And
said, Stuart Skinner's come back.
let's not forget the defense and the depth scoring too, how that was basically a concern all regular season. And in those
Mhm.
first 2 games against LA, and lo and behold, yeah, you're getting contributions from McDavid and Draisaitl, but you're getting a lot of that workload from that bottom half of that lineup, or like the other 3 lines aside from, or sorry, yeah, I mean, McDavid and Draisaitl are on different lines, but when they get paired together, they're on one. But when you get those that type of production from guys like, secondary scoring from RNH that you wanted to see a little bit more, from Corey Perry, Evander Kane came back and he looks like he's becoming that net front presence for them. These are the kind of guys that you want to see take a big step forward. And even Victor Arvidsson too, he's looked good at points. I mean, for all the depth that they've lost, even guys like, Warren Fogle, the list goes on. Dylan Holloway, they're keeping up. And I think
Mhm.
now maybe I don't see. Here's the thing. If I pick Edmonton to win the cup, I think it's going to jinx them and it's going to go Florida's way. So I'm just probably going to say, you know what? I'm just going to doubt Edmonton the rest of the way just so they could win the cup, basically. It's basically like you mentioned with that whole reverse curse jinx kind of thing with us right now. So, but yeah, I mean, you mentioned the goaltending and the reasons why I picked Edmonton or didn't pick them before are reasons why they're succeeding right now. And that's a bit of a head scratcher considering where they were just like 2, 3, 4 months ago.
Yeah, I mean it'll be interesting. obviously Zach Hyman last night broke his wrist. He had surgery today.
Yeah.
He's likely done for the remainder of the playoffs. So that's certainly going to hurt the Edmonton Oilers. But I mean, that said, like, you do have depth there. You've got the Evander Kane. You've got Nugent Hopkins. You have Bouchard from the point. I will say one thing. I think what we've learned in these final four is that, like it or not, dirty wins Stanley Cups,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
If you watched the game last night, it was Rupe Hintz' first game back after taking a brutal slash from Darnell Nurse in front of the net. And Bouchard is a guy that went right after his ankles again. A nice two hand on the top of the boot. Got him again later in the game on the back of the leg. They were clearly targeting Rupe Hintz. At the same time, you go to Florida and you see, took out Stolars in game one. I said it from the start of the playoffs. I would have thrown Ryan Reeves in game one against Florida. Game one against Ottawa, and you set the tone early and see what you're going to get away with. Because I do think that there's been some questionable officiating this playoffs. We've had this conversation in the past.
Putting it nicely.
Against all teams, not just the Leafs. I go back to Washington against Montreal. I go back to even Carolina against Florida in the flyby that Svechnikov had.
I was just about to say, you're worried about protecting the goaltending with Bobrovsky, but what happened with Stolars, it's a hockey play.
Yeah. So I mean, all of that in mind, right? Like, the two teams that may have gotten away with the most are going to be the two teams that end up in the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah.
So
it's funny that you put it that way. Yeah.
And like, not to go down some conspiracy whole nut type of thing, do it. But
why not?
Tell me that growing the game south of the border, especially down in Sunrise, Florida, is not a goal of the NHL's. On top of that, and what better way to do that than, back to back Stanley Cup runs, possibly back to back Stanley Cups. And then on top of that,
team do it. Why not get it with the other?
Right. And then on top of that, on the other side of things, if you look at the flip side in Edmonton, you've got the face of the game potentially winning his first Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
So anyways, this is financial gold.
I was about to say, NHL. you don't think that McDavid and Draisaitl are also like seething at the mouth right now for another opportunity because of what happened last year and how they were minutes away from, or like one goal away from winning it themselves? You can rest assured that they're going to be going pedal to the metal and throwing everything that they have at Bobrovsky if and when that does happen.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I think honestly, it comes down to finances for the league, and what better way to do that? What better way to grow the game financially than to have, a southern team in the Stanley Cup final on a yearly basis, really.
Yeah.
When you look at it now. And of course, the star of the game continue to chase his first Stanley Cup. It's almost perfect when you talk about growing the game financially. But anyways, regardless,
what would have been a better storyline before we head on to our next topic? It would have been a better storyline if it was a Canadian team versus a Canadian team.
Hell yeah. But the problem is, and this is where the conspiracy comes into play. The problem is, what you're going to see is Canadian markets, for the most part, will continue to support their teams regardless. And that's the thing with Toronto. All these people that are burning jerseys and throwing their jerseys, those same people are going to go out and buy jerseys either next season or the following season and be right back at the game and right back to spending $500 a ticket and right back to supporting this franchise. There's no worry from the league that the Toronto market's ever going to fail them. And that's why, like, first round or out of the playoffs or what have you, there's not a worry from the NHL standpoint that this team is going to support itself. And really, when you look at it, and we go back to the lockout years ago, where they, the CBA forced profit sharing within organizations. There was a time where the Edmonton Oilers were ready to, basically fold because they just couldn't afford they couldn't afford to pay the players the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that was prior to all their first overall picks. That was prior to all that. And part of what made it viable was, one, the salary cap, which did wonders for this league. Albeit, I still think there should be a soft cap with a luxury tax, the same way that baseball and basketball does. But two is that when you look at it, teams like Toronto, who continue to bring in the majority of the financial side, like you've got Toronto, you've got the New York Rangers, you've got the Montreal Canadiens, you've got even Chicago right now with Bedard. They're going to bring in a ton of revenue, right? Edmonton, obviously, right now with how consistently good they are, and considering they have two of the top 5 players in the league right now, they're going to consistently bring in revenue. But go back to a time when, Edmonton couldn't make the playoffs. They had consecutive first overall picks who couldn't get it done. And this was a team that was not getting the support that they're getting now, right? They weren't bringing in the same revenue that the Edmonton Oilers of 2025 are bringing in. So all of that is what made that viable. And now look at them, and they're doing it. You're telling me that a team like the Maple Leafs, who have not won the Cup since 1967, who have continued star power, and this is where a conversation comes in, where about if you continue to grow your franchise from within, then there should be a way that benefits the team and the players that remain with their teams, right? Mm-hmm. That would allow you to forget the 8-year extension versus a 7-year extension. I'm talking hey, if you're going to sign back with the team that drafted you and developed you and built you, take the Marner example as an example, right? If you take Marner, a guy who was drafted by the Leafs, who has developed with the Leafs, who's played with the Leafs for the last 9 seasons, and he chooses to stay with the Leafs, there's got to be kind of hey, you'll get a certain percentage of this, or you get, just to kind of create more, otherwise create more, I guess, not loyalty, but
an incentive kind of thing.
Incentive for players to stay and build a franchise, and allow a team like Toronto, who has been able to draft all this star power, to find a way to keep it, even though there's a hard cap. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's where you increase the cap for those teams, or a percentage of that comes off of their AAV, so that those players can stay with the teams and play for the teams that drafted and developed them. Does that make sense?
No, it does. Yeah, no, absolutely.
I went down this rabbit hole. I just went down this rabbit hole.
I mean, hey, you know what? That's why we have this. Express your thoughts for that. But no, I completely agree, in the sense that you want to try and keep your team or keep those players together as much as possible. But at the same time, and I know we're going to get to this very soon, is when you have this kind of failure and one player instantly becomes a scapegoat, what is that going to do for the franchise? How are you going to try and counteract that, is my main thing. And that's what the Maple Leafs are trying to do right now is, Marner's been the scapegoat for the past 2-3 postseasons where the production hasn't been there for key games, but you could make the argument for Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, all them. What are you going to try and do differently this time around? What's going to happen now? Is Marner going to walk? Are you going to try to do everything in your power to keep him because there's no one else viable on that market to try and replace him, kind of thing? So no, I definitely get it.
Yeah, it's just finding a way to create, and then still, if players want to walk, then they walk. But there's a lot to unfold right now in the NHL in terms of the tax-free states, the Canadian dollar versus US dollar, all that. There's so much to unfold from a financial standpoint. Anyways, we're gonna step away from that a little bit here, but there was just a lot to kind of unfold, a lot that's been going on in my mind since the Leafs got booted in the second round once again. Patrick, what's going on, buddy? Thanks for tuning in today. We appreciate it. Continued support from Patrick. And while we're on that, guys, we hit for overall, all time, we've hit 1,500 hours watched on
Yeah.
YouTube. We haven't really focused. This is our 5th year of the podcast. We didn't really focus on YouTube as an element for us until like the last year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And to hit that mark, we're closing in on 50,000 views. So we appreciate you guys. We're at 184 subscribers. So if you're watching now, if you're not subscribing, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Tell your friends, hit that subscribe button. The more subscribers we get, the better we're going to be able to kind of give you more access, give you more content. Hopefully we want to continue to grow this podcast to the point like we're doing live shows again in Toronto, because that was one hell of a run for us.
It was fun,
and we had a lot of fun.
It was a blast.
We got to interact with some people at the bar at the time too. So we're excited to continue that, and we're going to keep pushing, man. We're 5 years in and closing in on episode 200, which is wild.
Yeah,
it's wild. Patrick, yes, tax-free states is a real thing.
Yeah.
Rick, tax-free states should have a lower cap to even out. I thought like that, and that's what I'm saying. I 1,000% agree. Or there's got to be a way that, like, you know, here in Ontario, I know there's a bunch of players, Patrick Marleau, John Tavares, they're all going through with the CRA and going through a battle of, like, you know, when they sign their signing bonus and all that crap. There's got to be a way that within those states and those provinces, you lower the income tax or what have you, that it creates a little bit more of a intrigue to come. And there is intrigue to come to Canadian markets. All this BS about pressure and all that, at the end of the day,
it's nonsense. There's pressure everywhere.
Yeah, it's nonsense. And on top of that, at the end of the day, if you're living in a Canadian market and getting paid in US dollars, which the players do, you're actually benefiting by living in a Canadian market, because you know, everybody knows the conversion rate and all that crap right now, what's going on, but we won't get into that. That's not our expertise.
That's not why we're here.
That's not why we're here. Anyways, with that said, we put a YouTube short out this week, you know, trying to interact a little bit with our listeners now that the Leafs are out of the playoffs. We did get a few solid questions, including one from Patrick. We're going to get into the free agency side of things shortly here, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, one of the other notes was it was more of a comment more than anything, and it was from Pat French, Leafs fan 1, and they said, "Does the aftermath of every Leafs Game 7 loss make fans think it reminds them of an infamous tragedy?" So I don't know if you're talking about something specific, but to answer that, I don't really know how to answer that or respond. Every time I'm the type that going into Game 7, I had faith that they would. I had faith that they could get it done. Yeah. I still had hope. When they went up 2-0 in the second period and then 3-0, I lost faith. I knew that was done. I knew it was over. I was ready to get up and walk away, quit watching the game. And yes, there's a part of you that is kind of taken for the moment, and it hurts. It stings. As Patrick says here, no one likes to lose Game 7s. Yeah. You are so right about that. That said, when the season kicks off in October this year, I'm going to be right back in front of the TV watching those games, because at the end of the day, the passion, the excitement, the dopamine fix that comes from watching your Leafs play, the hope that you have at the beginning of the year that Matthews is going to tuck 70 and hell, maybe Marner's going to be playing for the Leafs again in October. Who knows? That is the part that brings fans back. Real fans. We do have to
separate the two. Fake ones from the real ones. Yes.
But when you lose a Game 7, does it feel like, you know, some hypothetical tragedy? Absolutely. 1,000%. It breaks my heart every time I see them get knocked out of the playoffs. It breaks my heart knowing that one time in the next 10 years, they might not make the playoffs. All of that goes through my head. So to answer
it's also
your
the fact that they make all these moves to make this kind of deep run. And this was the deepest team that we've seen in some time. The decor, everything. We've even saw this is the most competitive fourth line that we've actually had in some time. It's unfortunate they didn't get any production, and that probably needs to change. Probably something that they're going to look at next year. But they made the necessary moves to go on a deep run. They did what they needed to do, and you could argue about Scott Laughton being worth the first. Yeah, whatever. Okay, fine. We
He
can
has
sit
term.
here.
He has term.
He has term. That was
Right.
the main thing. He had another year on his contract. We can argue about the fact that, why did the Maple Leafs go after Marchand? There was basically no inclination that Marchand was getting traded until at the very end, and then we got Brandon Carlo. And I hope this was just like kind of an adjustment period with Carlo, because Brandon Carlo that we saw with the Bruins, much different than Brandon Carlo that we saw with the Leaf at times. I think maybe with the full or half a year under his belt, he's got that experience playing in this market. I think next year may be a little bit better for him, but don't sit there and tell me that they didn't make enough or make any moves enough to push the needle forward for this team when they actually did.
Also, look at what Carolina's done against the Florida Panthers.
Oh, yeah.
Ignore the fact that it's an argument to go back to 1 versus 8, because this would have been a first-round series. But the fact that they're getting blown out by the Florida Panthers, Leafs fans should take a step back from their emotional downfall and say, you know what?
We were
Maybe
the only
we should
team that did much.
Maybe we should apologize to Marner, because he wasn't as bad as people think.
Yeah.
He made mistakes, as every player does, and we talked about how he's magnified. Again, Patrick, with Stolarz in, this is a different series. We're not going 7. We're not going 7, right?
If Stolarz was playing game 3, I think we would have locked that 3-1 lead down.
You throw Revo in there in game 1, I guarantee he would have taken out Reinhart a lot faster than Carolina did. So
I also find this funny when I said that the Maple Leafs were basically the only team to give Florida a real push. Because, I mean, Carolina won 1 game, but they're still getting out dominated. They're getting outplayed constantly. And someone commented to me on Twitter, and it's just like, oh, you know what? You know, you're getting these little victories right now. Is that how you're going to see it? Yeah, I am going to see it that way. And I find it funny that before I could respond back, the guy blocked me. So, funny how that works out, right? You respond to me, yet I get blocked. Anyways, I'm not going to lose sleep over that. But my thing is, yes, disappointing ending. But Florida wiped the floor with Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay was injured. They dealt with a lot of injuries, but they still wiped the floor with them. They're wiping the floor with Carolina right now. Carolina has no response because they're all still fixated in that past Maple Leaf team where they're all puck possession, throw everything on net, see what you can do. That's not necessarily going to work with the Florida Panthers. Maple Leafs basically had the best response and played them as best as possible throughout a 7-game series. Basically, again, game 7, terrible. Game 5, terrible. But for the most part, they stayed in it and they battled hard. So before we say that, okay, again, we're still a little bit angry at the results. Out of those 3 teams, the Maple Leafs could have moved on, and I think they could have handled the Carolina Hurricanes. I think they would have handled the Washington Capitals if they won, and I still think the Maple Leafs would have gone on the run had they beat Florida.
Yeah, no doubt. Rick Furr says, when Montreal buys out Josh Anderson, I think the Leafs should sign him. No more than $3 million. Him on a line with Domi and Lawton should work.
I don't mind that.
It's not a terrible idea.
Yeah, it's not. My main concern is the streakiness of his game. That's my thing. And when I see a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans tweet or give their thoughts, whatever, it's mainly about Josh Anderson's consistency. I mean, when he is on his game, he is definitely on his game. But overall, I don't know. He is a fit. He is a fit because he plays that Berube style. But when you look at after that 27-goal season that he had with the Columbus Blue Jackets, even with Montreal, he hasn't really quite lived up to those expectations. You know, you're probably maybe looking at consistently 40, 50 points. He hasn't cracked that once. So if he is going to be on that third line, great. If he's making third line money, I will take that. But just take the consistency factor into that as well is how I see that.
Yeah. I mean, and who knows? Everyone always can find a way to have a breakout season, even later in the career. But I don't mind that move at the right price. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see him kind of on a line. That'd be a tough line.
Be a tough line.
Nails, just grinding opponents down. Anyways, last comment I think we had one more comment here aside from Patrick's to look at the free agency aspect of things. But yeah, it was Paul Martin says, my wish for the Leafs to have better fans, also a better media. The Leaf media are assholes. Then maybe the Leaf players would play harder for the fans. I, sure. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
The
they are asking the tough questions. They're asking the tough, right questions. I mean, there are some where it's just like, okay, why are you going this route kind of thing? But it's fair to ask the team, are you tired of, or it's fair to ask Austin Matthews after, you're another disappointing loss. And he's just like, so I can't remember who it was, but you hear them say, are you tired of this happening? And he's just like, yeah, I am. There is nothing wrong with that to get emotions from the player in the right context. And that is the perfect question to ask. It is perfectly fine to ask Mitch Marner, do you think that this is your last game? How are things going to pan out kind of thing? I mean, again, media does have a tough job, but when they do ask the right questions, there's nothing wrong with that. You are going to have some stupid questions regardless. And I think we know who we're thinking about in regards to that, but for the most part, they do a fine job covering the team, asking the questions, and then putting it from pen to paper. I have no problem with that.
Here's what I'll say. It's tough for any person in one market to comment on how their market is worse media wise than another market, because you're not watching, you're not reading the coverage of another market on a regular basis. So for you to comment on that and compare, it's not really a legitimate comparison.
Mm-hmm.
In saying that, like, Toronto is a hub, right? For hockey. It has been for over 100 years. Are there clowns in the media like a Dave Feschuk and a Steve Simmons? Absolutely. They're gonna go one route, whereas people like a Chris Johnston and Mark Masters and a David Alter are gonna go a different route, and they're still gonna ask the tough questions. That's their job. They're getting paid to get quotes. If the players don't want to give them quotes, if the players don't want to hold themselves accountable the same way Patrick said here, that's up to them.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, look at a guy like Nylander. A guy like Nylander is thriving in this market because
he loves it.
He loves the media attention.
It kind of feels like he always has his answers already ready.
It's very Paul Maurice like, right? Like he's going in and he knows he's got one quote that he's going to throw out there, and everyone's going to feed off of it. That's
just
going
like
to be
that
what
shotgunning
he's
a beer
on.
comment.
Exactly, and that's what he's going to give them for that particular game. Hey, you know what? This is what happened. Blah 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 blah, and he knows that going into that scrum, and that's what they're going to feed off of. And then he doesn't have to say much else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are the media assholes? Sure. I mean, sure. That's part of their job. They're part of their job is to hold you accountable. Are the fans terrible? No. The fans are actually incredible. And the select few that have jumped on the bandwagon near the end of the season, want to get to playoff games and whatever else,
are probably the same ones throwing the jerseys on the ice.
Yeah, so if you wanna base Toronto Maple Leaf fans on those select few, by all means go for it. But I don't think there's a player that has not wanted to play hard for his team. I don't agree with that comment. So, anyways, thanks for writing in. Anyways, appreciate it. Yeah, sorry, I'm just gonna read the comments here. Patrick, Willie doesn't shake. He almost doesn't feel enough. You could say when he's lazy. Willie is smooth. Willie was made for this market. Like, I don't care what anybody says. I was a Willie hater the first couple seasons. I thrive off. He's
got
this
that
guy
aura,
now.
man.
Like, he's just unbelievable.
He's got that vibe.
Rick's all about who we're bringing in and everything. I love this. If they sign Tanev and Connor Brown to fill the fourth line, they're already a better team. Get rid of Yarncroke and Kempf.
I think Rick and I may be on the same page. You got to tune in for one of my upcoming posts at THW, man.
There you go, Rick. Check out Peter's post over at the Hockey Writers. Yeah, I look, David Kampf. He was great the first couple seasons he was here. Had a bit of an off season. I agree with Patrick. Keep Lorentz
Mhm.
1,000%.
You got to keep
Um,
him.
in terms of Yarncroke, he was gone all year, and then he came back, and he didn't do enough for me in the postseason. I said this when they threw Robertson in, prior to when they threw Robertson in. Throw Robertson in, let him do something. Let him is he a liability defensively? Absolutely. But is he gonna go and get you some offense? 1,000%. And what did he do? He went and scored. So I don't know. I just it's I don't know. It's I'm not sold on Yarn Croak. But anyways,
What's
um
funny is because I was a big Kelly Yarncroke fan when we signed him, when we brought him in. Those first 2 years, it looked like, okay, we got something. You got a third line player that could score at least 15, 20 goals. Then all of a sudden, the injury hit, and he just hasn't been the same since. So I think now this is probably the perfect time to walk away from him, walk away from Camp, and find some value in some depth players in kind of like that third, fourth line role that you can rely on constantly. And honestly, again, Rick brought up one of those names. I'm not going to mention which one, but there is a name that you mentioned that I am going to talk about in a not necessarily bargain hunting kind of free agency, but a way to improve that bottom six, fourth line kind of thing. So one of those names that Rick mentioned are on there. There are two others that I have in the back of my mind as well. So I think that these are guys that'll fit in the system very, very well.
Yeah, no, definitely check out Peter's writings over at the Hockey Writers. Always good content. Anyways, we do have two more topics we want to get to before we close it out here. But before we do, just a quick word from our folks over at DraftKings Sportsbook. The fastest game on ice just hit another gear. Welcome to the Stanley Cup playoffs, where legends are made and every shift could turn the tide. And now the DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can take every slapshot, breakaway, and overtime thriller to the next level. New to betting on the Stanley Cup playoffs? You're in for an exciting time. Getting started it is a breeze. Fire up the DraftKings Sportsbook app, pick your team to win, lock in your wager, and you're off to the races. It's fast, simple, and puts you right in the middle of the action. For DraftKings, you can check them out now. I believe Corey Perry the other night or last night was a 2.61 odds to get a single point. He actually recorded 2 assists in the game last night, so that would have been a nice bet to lock into. Here's the kicker. New customers who bet just $5 will score $300 in bonus bets if their wager hits. That's right, turn $5 into a playoff payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code THPN. That's promo code THPN to unlock $300 in bonus bets when your $5 bet wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bet must win to receive reward. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Copyright 2025 NHL. Anyways, like I said, two last notes to get to here. We'll kick it off with Marner. There's been a lot of speculation on where he's going to go. Of course, I noted on last week's podcast that I think it's a mistake for the Leafs to let him walk. Obviously, at the right price, I would want to keep him. Who knows if they're going to get to that? It sounds more and more like Darren Dreger was out there saying 99% he's gone. It's sounding more and more like he's going to be gone. There could be a sign and trade involved. There's so much speculation right now around Marner and the Maple Leafs, and of course, that's part of being in that hub of Toronto. But the latest The latest I've seen San Jose thrown out there. I've seen Vegas thrown out there. I've seen Florida thrown out there. I mean, you name it, Peter. There's been a number of teams thrown out there.
Yeah.
I'm hard pressed to see him go to Florida, albeit it is a tax-free state. But your thoughts? Are we seeing? Is this a sign and trade opportunity? Are we seeing Marner go? What's the buzz around Mitch Marner right now?
I mean, if there is a sign and trade, I think that would probably be the best thing for the Maple Leafs because of the fact that you can at least get something in return. But if we're looking at kind of like what's the return going to be, it's not going to be a high return because you look at how Jake Gensel was traded to the Lightning last year for a 3rd round pick because it was basically his rights and opportunity to negotiate a contract with him. So with Marner, you're probably looking at mid picks coming back. You're not going to get a big return. You're not going to get that Nico Rantanen in return because at least that was mid-season. At least you got something in return with Martin H.S. if you're Colorado. But I'm kind of hard-pressed to see that it's going to be a big return unless something does happen and somebody surprises me. But because Gensel is kind of like I would say the Gensel is kind of that top pairing winger, goal scorer kind of player. He's smaller, but he finds the back of the net very well. He's been very productive. I think maybe if you're the Maple Leafs, maybe you could try and ask for a 1st or 2nd for Marner or both to try and get something in return. I don't think you're going to get a roster player, but if that's the case, I think that's ideal. If it's a sign and trade, at least you get an asset back. Where he's going to go, again, there are a lot of names coming out. You mentioned San Jose. I think there's the possibility of Chicago being in there as well. I can't see Marner going to a rebuilding team right now. One, I think San Jose is in a better spot than many people think that they're already in. I mean, you're looking at the way Kasper Halton is playing in the playoffs, Mem Cup right now. You already got depth up front with, other players like Quentin Musty, Igor Chernyshov,
Sam Dickinson on the back
Sam
end.
Dickinson, the possibility of adding a Matthew Schaefer and or a Michael Misa who could play both center and wing. I don't know for sure if you're going to look at Mitch Marner right now and say, is this guy going to push us forward when your rookie core or your own core for the San Jose Sharks is starting to come forward? I can't see him going to Chicago and making more money than Connor Bedard at one point. That to me just doesn't seem realistic. But then again, anything is possible. The big name players I'm seeing are Florida. I saw Vegas as well. I'm looking at both teams, and it's like, okay, Vegas is over to cap space. They have 26 roster spots available already, and they're over that limit of the 23. You have to worry about, not this season coming up, but the one after that one with Jack Eichel. If you want to remain and keep him in the fold where he's making $10 million, he's going to ask for a new contract, a little bit more than what he's asking right now because he already has a Stanley Cup. Mitch Marner doesn't. And if Mitch Marner is going to be making more than Jack Eichel, where does that line draw? Especially if you're Eichel, be like, hey, I got you guys the cup or helped you get a cup. I want my money as well. Florida, I kind of feel the same thing. I don't know exactly if that is possible as well because their roster size, again, cap limit as well. I think Vegas has a lot more UFAs, but they're more like depth players coming off the books. They have a lot of players signed long-term, and same with Florida too. I mean, unless you decide if you're Florida, you think that Sam Bennett is not, or Mitch Marner is more of an upgrade over Sam Bennett. Based on what's happening in the playoffs right now, I don't see that. So it's interesting to see how it's going to unfold for next season. But yeah, Florida's got a lot of players still on the books. Most of their names coming off are like on defense. So you got Aaron Ekblad, that'll free up $7.5 million. You're freeing up $4.4 in Sam Bennett. Is that kind of enough to still go after Marner? Maybe, but you're losing 2 players for the price of 1. And these are 2 guys that have been critical to your Stanley Cup success. So I don't know what's going to happen with Marner. I think that the Maple Leafs should try to keep him. I know people don't want to hear this, but like you, again, who else are you going to find on the market that's better than Mitch Marner, that could get 100 points, that could play multiple situations. It's tough, but I understand the need for change right now because you can't go back with this core anymore. And if it ultimately means Marner walking and you have those backup options, but you got to be sure to sign those backup options, I think that's going to be critical for the Leafs.
So from a Leaf standpoint, I mean, if you're talking trading Marner, the conversation has to be around Matthews as well. Like he's had the same production, actually less production over the last 5 seasons as Mitch Marner. So this is why I think that Leafs Nation's being a little bit hard on Marner. That said, playing armchair GM, sitting back and really analyzing the situation, Marner's an incredible player. He's going to be an Olympian. Yeah. We talked about him at the Four Nations face-off. He's not a guy that's going to carry a team by himself. And that's why the $13 million doesn't sit well with me, because he's not a guy that's going to go out and carry a team all by himself. He needs that supporting cast.
Yeah. And if there's a lot of pressure on him right now, imagine what's going to happen when he falters with $13 million under his name.
So, from that standpoint, I mean, would I love to keep Marner? Do I think the Leafs need to? I think it's a mistake if they let him walk. Absolutely, all of that. At the same time, you know, if you are gonna move him, you gotta talk to him now. Give him time to let the emotions rest, because obviously it was a tough road over the last couple of weeks. So you let the emotions rest there. As a team, you let the emotions rest. You get Keith Pelley and you get Brad Treliving on the same page, and then you go and you visit with Marner and you say, where's your head at? If he wants out and he is 100% he wants out, then your conversation is, okay, we're doing a sign and trade. We'll get you for 7 years, 8 years at this dollar amount, and you've got a team already on standby, ready to go with a package to get that deal.
I think that's the only way the package. I think that's the only way you'll get a massive return if you already sign him and then trade him. If you're trading the rights, then that's a whole different situation right there. Yeah.
Yes, 1,000%. Outside of that, you know, the conversation really now is whether or not Marner wants to stay. If he's 50-50, I think you gotta explore your options and see what you can do. If he's 100% that he wants to stay, or even 80% he wants to stay, then you find a way to get a deal done. And you run it back again. Like, listen, folks, whoever's tuning in and says that this team didn't get it done, they were 1 win away from taking on the Carolina Hurricanes in the conference final to go on to the Stanley Cup. And you can't sit here and tell me that if they got by the Florida Panthers that they would not have smashed the Carolina Hurricanes as well. So this team was 1 win away from potentially going on a run to the Stanley Cup final in what would have been a all-Canadian matchup against the Edmonton Oilers. And we've seen Toronto shut down McDavid and Draisaitl in back-to-back games before and hold them to 0 points. So there, like, the what ifs that come to mind is nuts. This is a different team now. It's not Kyle Dubas behind the negotiations saying, you know, like, yeah, whatever you want, we'll give it to you. It's Brad Treliving. He's had experience with this. He's going to play a little bit more hardball, and I think that's going to be the difference maker if Marner chooses to stay. On top of that, also, the cap's going up.
Shanahan isn't also here to provide that safeguard or bubble to keep that core intact too. So It's now not so much about the core four, and we even got hints from Berube too. You know, forget the whole core four stuff. This is about the whole team.
Yeah.
If you're now making it about yourself as opposed for the full team right now, you got to look at yourself in the mirror. This is not about you anymore. Exactly. Bye-bye. I mean, great. Thank you for the last, 7, 8, 9 years. But ultimately, this isn't about one group. It's about who wants to stay. Like you mentioned, like Craig Conroy. If you want to be here, show that you want to be here. Then we'll give you the money. But you got to perform like you want to be here.
Yeah, 1,000%.
That's the thing. That after what you just said right now about the whole mantra of wanting to be here, I just thought of the fact that there's no more Shanahan, there's no more core four. It's now the mantra of no grit, no grind, no greatness. That's basically what they're falling on right now.
The Matthew Nyes mentality. The Matthew
Yes.
Nyes mentality. He
Yeah.
wants to be here. He wants to forget offer sheets. He wants to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, lastly, before we close it out, we'll just touch on this quickly. I don't want to get too much into free agency yet, but there's a suggestion that Nikolai
It's a rumor.
Ehlers, a
Mm-hmm.
rumor, could be a potential, or the Leafs could be potential suitors for Nikolai Ehlers. Give me a quick word on what your thoughts are on the Leafs going after Ehlers.
See, it's really interesting because if you do let Marner walk, I always thought that Ehlers would be a name that you could fall back on. And for a couple of reasons. One, he ain't going to cost $13 million. He would probably be a little bit more around 8.5 max, maybe even a little bit less. So let's just go 7.5 to 8.5 in that realm. You're not going to get the same type of production. You're not going to get the defense, but you're still going to get that same offensive contributions in terms of shot generation, scoring chances, offensive zone time. He may not be, and not only that, on that line, Matthews is going to be the go-to guy right now. You got your hard worker in Matthew Nyes. You can bump up William Nylander and even put Ehlers on the second line as well. But if Ehlers is on that top line, now not all the pressure is going to fall on Auston Matthews right now, where you don't have two guys to kind of go back and forth with. I still think Ehlers is a really great complementary player where he can still provide a little bit more of that tenacity factor where Mitch Marner shies away from the physical play. Ehlers goes right into the fray. He goes right into the battle and he's digging for that puck, similar to like that Matthew Nyes mentality. I think you'll get a little bit more offensive contributions, a little bit less than Marner, but I think if you're willing to pay him 7.5 to 8.5 for at least 75, 80 points for Ehlers, possibly. I don't even think Ehlers has hit that high in his career. 64 point season. Okay, so maybe if you're banking on him getting a little bit more, but
and that was back in 2016-17.
Yeah, so that was his sophomore season. So maybe being a little optimistic about that, but if he could at least push 70, I know you're losing like 30 plus points with Marner, but at least you get a little bit more of that competitive edge, that competitive or that motor that Ehlers has a little bit more, where he's not afraid to go into the dirty areas of the ice. So are you going to take some of the defense and other aspects that Marner got and put that towards Ehlers? Maybe. Who knows? It all depends on which direction they want to go down, or if there's another player that they have in mind that's similar to Ehlers. That's my thought process. You're getting a little bit of give and take, like you're taking stuff away, but you're still adding areas that makes this team a little bit more competitive with Ehlers compared to Marner. So that to me is how I stand on this early rumor. Again, if they do sign him, great, but you still got a lot to work with or a lot to worry about afterwards, because it's just one part of that long to-do list that Tree has to do or has to work on in order to find the answers. Because I know that they were looking at having a group meeting or like a meeting after what happened with Shanahan, Treliving, and all of them. Obviously, it didn't happen because Shanny's gone. So I do have faith in Tree that he knows what he's doing. And I think he'll get the job done, depending if he does go after Ehlers or if he goes after somebody else in the event that Marner does walk.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how sold I am on this rumor. Like I said, 64 points back in 16-17.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, he's played only 2 full seasons.
Injuries don't help either. Yeah.
Injuries play into it. So if you're looking for a guy who's going to put up, second line potential, and you can get him for 6 to 7 million, I'd go for it. That said, I'm not entirely sold on this one. I like Ehlers as a player. The injury aspect worries me a little bit. I don't want to pay for a guy that's not going to be in the lineup.
That's fair.
Lastly, before we go here, Patrick said thoughts on RFA like McLeod, Velarde, and McTavish. Any chance of getting those guys? No.
I think you got to worry about your own RFA and Matthew Nyes first before you could go after them. Out of all those three, I would like Velarde.
Yeah.
I would say
I'm a big McTavish guy. I would love McTavish. He's got
actually
a lot of upside.
That'd be a good one, because then if you bump JT down to that 3C, you could have Matthews, McTavish, Tavares.
Yeah, I just don't know if you have the pieces right now that Anaheim's looking for. That said, I mean, like if you're going to go after one of them, those last two, Velarde and McTavish, would definitely be two guys that you want to kind of have your eye on. I'll say lastly before we go here, the one thing that continues to be talked about is offer sheets this offseason. I think people are all hyped up about offer sheets because of what happened last offseason with Edmonton and St. Louis. Nobody's going to be offering offer sheets of that kind of magnitude because nobody's going to be willing to give up their 2026 first round pick. Gavin McKenna, there's
some guy
no
named
way,
McKenna, yeah.
There's no way teams are willing to give that up. So that's why I think Matthew Knies offer sheet off the table, Evan Bouchard offer sheet off the table. Like it just, I mean, unless you really want to screw the Oilers, which maybe it's out there. I don't know, but I have a hard time believing that we're going to see any kind of offer sheet of that kind of magnitude. But, I've been wrong before. I've eaten my words many times on this podcast.
Again, we have heard that Matthew Knies and his agent don't want to entertain that. We know the Maple Leafs will match anything for Knies, but if there's a team willing to risk it all just to spite the Oilers and give Bouchard 10, 11 mil, oh man, that'll be a talking point for sure.
It could be a team that's, a playoff binge or playoff bubble team that knows they don't have a chance at Gavin McKenna. And that might be the difference.
They're far out, yeah.
Who knows? Wouldn't it be crazy if St. Louis goes out and
does it a third time?
Reunites Broberg and Bouchard? Oh my God.
Oh, that would really be...
Doug Armstrong would just be target number one at Edmonton. He wouldn't be able to travel with the team ever again. So.
Oh, man. I mean, hey, if you think about it, didn't Brian Burke do that with Dustin Penner?
I believe he did,
with the Oilers?
Yeah.
And it just seems all the offer sheets are coming back to the Oilers right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Last question by Patrick before we close out. If Edmonton doesn't win the Cup, will McDavid sign in 2026?
I want to say no. I want to say that maybe he comes home, but I don't know. I think he's too invested.
Just built that huge house out in Edmonton.
Draisaitl already signed. It wouldn't be fair to Draisaitl if McDavid ups and leaves again. I think they're committed because of their two guys.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think he stays. I think they find a way to make him stay.
I think you could try and rework the system in like NHL 26 or whatever, where you could get McDavid on the Leafs anyways, but that's probably as far as you're going to get.
Yeah, no, for sure. Anyways, thanks again, Patrick and Rick, for tuning in. We appreciate it. As mentioned, guys, if you haven't already, make sure you hammer that subscribe button. Let's push that subscribers number over 200 on our way to
spread the word.
500. Yes. Again, episode 199. We're going to hit 200 next week, man. It's another milestone for the podcast. Really excited. We got a lot to talk about this offseason. We're going to be hammering out episodes weekly as we normally do. Until then, make sure you tune in to these episodes, share them, like them, subscribe. Check us both out over at the Hockey Writers. We got a lot of draft content coming up in the next little bit here. It's been a fun week. And until next week, when we hit episode 200, thank you all for tuning in this week. We'll leave you with a little Alex Hobson 25.